people no longer bound by their non-disclosure agreements. What can you now disclose? I worked at a gym, and in the showers there was yellow shampoo and blue body wash in pump dispensers. I found out that the only difference between the two soaps was the color. Edit. Memory joggers, it was 25 plus years ago. Hand soap was blue, body wash was green, shampoo was yellow. All the same. Edit 2. As funny as the replies are, it wasn't an NDA about soap. It was just a generic employment NDA to protect the privacy of members and business affairs of the gym. I was once a IT contractor for a now defunct bureau within the Department of the Interior during the event Deepwater Horizon disaster. Since the department has its hands in offshore drilling, they were part of the response team and boots on the ground. Anyway, it's a little known fact that all the extra stress plus aging it equipment during the first 48 hours after the blowout took their entire authentication and email infrastructure down, Active Directory and Exchange, for 2 days. There were also other weird glitches from offices around the US not related to the outage. A switch going out here, building automation there. It was a fucking disaster. This was, of course, after years of emails and documentation stating they were heading that way. I was directly involved with recovering that infrastructure and the aftermath of dissolving the bureau, which really wasn't anything special. They just became 3 different bureaus, got new email addresses, and continued on in their role under a new title. Edit. Words and detail. I was at a startup like that. The owners/bosses were pieces of shit, because that's all that could come out of their mouths. Anyway, I stayed there for far too long. I got to watch one programmer sit in abject astonishment all day while he examined the code he was going to maintain. He lasted 1 day, didn't come back for his second day. I watched another new hire come in one morning, but never returned from lunch. I learned this life pro tip from working there: if the person who hired you quits, you should quit too. Not just true for NASA, true for many government agencies. The issue is that money is zero sum, and if one program is getting money, it is getting cut from another program. So everyone is fighting to get their share and avoid having to make staffing cuts. Fixing this would probably require a fundamental change in the executive branch as well as the appropriations process. We would have to move from a leadership system in which you have new political appointees coming in every few years who aren't familiar with the programs to permanent leadership who are focused on making all the different sub-agency departments work synergistically. Appropriations would have to change to have predictable funding levels for each program for several years. I was a contractor for NASA. I still fully support the agency, but I was extremely bummed when I learned that each separate NASA center, for instance, JPL, Kennedy, American English's, Goddard, hides many of its inventions and breakthroughs from the other centers, so that when HQ is ready to assign a big mission and a lot of dollars to one center, they have a better chance to compete over the others. Look what we invented. American Englishes can't do this over there. Give us the next moon orbiter. The downside is that there is a ton of reinvention and duplicated efforts going on. Sometimes years of work go down the drain when another center does the same thing faster. My perspective was, you all work for NASA. Share knowledge, collaborate. I was frequently ordered to tone down anything revealing when speaking to other centers. I used to work for a large gas station chain. I worked at its warehouse, where it creates a lot of the donuts. The room was really hot, so we were always sweating. There's some machines where the donuts get glazed in chocolate. They're these small machines, they look almost like a BBQ grill. They always wanted us to be super fast glazing the donuts. Working in a hot room and working at super fast speeds, it was natural for a lot of people's sweat to just drip in the chocolate underneath us. Never eat the chocolate donuts from a gas station. When I was fired from Auntie Anne's in 2010, I signed a 10-year non-compete/NDA contract, promising not to detail the baking secrets or work for another pretzel establishment. Well, that ended this year, so now I can run out and start a pretzel store, because the secret I was keeping was making pretzels literally requires 2 products, one of them being water and the other a large bag of pretzel meal/dust/powder. Quite literally anyone with $2,500 can start a pretzel stand and make perfectly fine pretzels. It's not difficult whatsoever. Edit. I signed the letter when I was hired, but I got a copy with my termination letter. I disclosed to a minority partner that the majority partner owed him $100k. He could have easily received a check for that amount, but he sued for $700k, spent $300k on a lawyer and got nothing. I saw the owner of a company I worked for do the same thing. A sales employee sued for not getting proper commissions and the CEO easily paid 10 times that amount fighting it in court, only to lose and have to pay anyways. Spite. Edit. Worked for. My best friend worked at a roadside attraction near Chattanooga, Tennessee, called Ruby Falls. There's something else called Ruby Falls elsewhere in the country. It's supposedly a waterfall inside a cave. Of course, the trail to the cave is redone with all sorts of rock brought in from around the world. I think they've owned up to that part now. But the waterfall itself is barely a trickle naturally, and then only in the wetter season. They've run a pipe up there to supplement the falls, hidden by cracks and crevices and cemented over, and powered by a pump off to the side, which you can't hear when the water is splashing down from 100 feet overhead. It's 99% from the city of Chattanooga, or maybe Lookout Mountain, municipal water supply. Of course, with such a wet area, old electrical wires going back to the Great Depression, and 300 feet underground, it sputters, or shorts out, and stops every now and then. The first rule in the falls room is make everybody leave immediately if the power goes out, not for safety, but because the fable agreed upon will be shown as fake. This should be higher up the list. It's scary how incompetent people just guffaw their way into positions of power and really have no idea how to run a business. I mean, to be fair, I'm talking some really big companies here. One of our clients was Coca-Cola, for example. I'm not afraid to mention them as they were one of the few clients that really had their shit together. Their data was usually pretty on point and they were extremely thorough. These big name companies make bank, but many of them had absolutely no clue where that bank was coming from. The key account managers just cared that their totals were good. Individual revenue streams didn't matter as long as in the end, the sum total was fine. I used to work in fine dining in Oklahoma City. Cocaine everywhere. I've personally walked in on several NBA players over the years, face down in that white girl. Come to mention it, I've seen several of them fucking other guests on the same bathroom counter that their teammates just did a line off of. Personally got to watch Harold Hamm sign his divorce check. $975 million is a whole lot of zeros in a small space. Wild times indeed. Edit. For those that may want more stories, I did get to see LeBron covered in toilet paper. Hilarity ensued. Needless to say, she was escorted out. Having signed NDAs and held security clearances, I can say that the information that was actually protected for me ended up being very boring for normal people, but very important to competitors who are hoping for that slight edge. That's usually how it goes. I would argue like 80% of NDAs are probably about things the normal person would give no fucks about, but if it got into the hands of the wrong group or specific individual that knew how to use that information to their advantage, well, that's when you have issues. I think I'm finally ready to let the world know my secret. If you've ever used VeriSite, the loading spinners you see when the report loads aren't waiting for anything. People kept complaining that reports were coming back too fast, so it must not be working right. It doesn't take long to complete a few hundred Google searches simultaneously, so the loading spinner just makes you wait a few seconds longer, so it feels like more is happening. So glad to finally get that off my chest. Bonus fact, edit, I also added applying phlebotinum, reticulating splines, and looking for cat memes as random loading messages, but they wouldn't let me do harassing at TEDCRUZ on Twitter. I was asked to sign an NDA to be able to see the magical device they had that was going to change the game for its services. It was a Rapu board / case that had the company's logo stamped on it, and it ran sense. Aka, do-it-yourself router. This magical technology was and is still available for about $150 a unit. I got quite a strange look when I had to explain that their NDA would mean jack shit as the item was widely available and known. Side note, they are pretty awesome. For anyone wanting to use sense-based gateway/routers, it's a lot nicer than an old PC taking up a bunch of space. I'd rather not risk it, but let's just say hypothetically that a certain tech company who is, inside, keeps its campuses pretty subpar. I'm talking old, rundown buildings that need dozens of buckets everywhere to catch water every time it rains. They bully companies in the local economy to put up with their horse shot, cause they know they're too big to hear a no. Hypothetically, edit, I feel like I'm about to get a very angry and legal jargon filled phone call. Also, I'm leaving horse shot cause I think it's funny. Used to work as a content marketer. Basically, companies of all sizes and all industries would pay my company money to essentially ghostwrite articles for their websites, ebooks, case studies, white papers, daily blogs, etc. Very rarely would we have a writer who was actually an expert in a given area. Most of the time we just googled for a few relevant points and some pretty bare bones research. Then these companies slap someone else's name on it who has a fancy, related background but played no part in creating that content, to try and make it look credible. Had some huge companies on our client list who painted themselves as thought leaders in their industries, who actually just had a bunch of underpaid, fresh from college writers cranking out thousands of words of content a day with no real knowledge or training in those fields. Some of them weren't secretive about using our services, but we had a lot of NDA clients who were very concerned about their reputations if people knew how much of their research and written content was created this way. A major higher ed resource company comes to mind, software companies, government, cybersecurity, healthcare industries, etc, etc. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you would like to see more, feel free to subscribe.